Hi, I'm Alice, and I'd like to welcome you to Alice in Eduland, a podcast created by EDLAB, Maastricht University Center for Teaching and Learning. In this podcast, we'll journey into the heart of education, exploring and celebrating the collaborative spirit, the stories, and the wisdom that enrich the educational landscape. Today, we're delving into the fascinating realm of communities of practice. So, what is a community of practice? Why do they matter? And how can you join or start one? Based on our experiences facilitating communities of practice, and on research conducted about these and other types of professional interest groups, at EDLAB we see a community of practice as a group of people who share a concern or passion about a topic and who deepen their knowledge and expertise by interacting on an ongoing basis. We feel communities of practice are really the lifeblood of education because they provide safe space where people can voluntarily and informally connect with and learn from one another, possibly work together on meaningful initiatives, and experience inspiration and renewed energy for their professional practice. As someone who is currently building a community of practice around the topic of AI in education, and who has conducted a little bit of research on the topic, I'm really excited to learn more from three members of Maastricht University's teaching and learning community who have experience participating in and leading communities of practice. I'll be inviting them to share their passion for these communities, why people enjoy being part of them, and also helpful tips for how to start one and keep it going after the initial burst of enthusiasm. With me here today are Ellen Bastians, Director of EDLAB, Karen Konings, Associate Professor at the School of Health Professions Education, and Robin Ausmeyer, a Teaching Fellow at the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and an Education Research Fellow at EDLAB. Thank you so much for being here with me today. To start off with, what is a community practice to you? Because I think there are many kind of ideas about what it is, what kind of forms it can take, or what purposes it serves. And why you think it's so important that we have these here. So maybe we'll start with Ellen, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, Ellen Bastiaans, I'm the director of EDLAB, and EDLAB is Maastricht University Center for Teaching and Learning. And together with 15 people, we try to engage Maastricht University community on teaching and learning. So we hope to offer a platform where people who like to talk about education, to work on their education, meet up, collaborate, join communities to further bring their knowledge and their practice, their education practice. And in the end, via that means to improve our education. And in that sense, EDLAB is a community. As a group, we are a community. But I also hope to bring in and create communities with faculty staff members around specific themes that are now high on the agenda for the whole university. And for me, then, a community is an environment to learn and to engage.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really interesting to hear how EDLAB is a community, and it also fosters other communities and hopes to connect with communities within the university. And so I think Robin and Karen, you also kind of bring those examples here of communities that exist in different faculties. So actually, I'll invite you, Karen, to share.
Yeah, my name is Karen Konings. Yeah, I'm in fact interested in co-creation of education already for about 20 years. And co-creation of education means that we involve not only teachers and educational developers, but also students in the development of our education. And next to that, I have my own community of practice within our school, a special interest group on co-creation and educational change of scholars, students who are interested in co-creation. And we regularly meet every 6 weeks and discuss about our work, literature that we have found, ideas we have for conference, workshops, and papers we want to write together. So that's a nicely developing community of practice.
Great, thank you. And Robin, your story?
So I'm Robin Ausmeyer. I'm a teaching fellow in the art and literature department at FASOS. And I recently started an educational research fellowship at EDLAB as well. And I've had some experience over the past, I think it is now 3 years, of being part of these communities of practice, specifically a community of practice on inclusivity and diversity at FASOS, where we gather every 2 months usually to discuss kind of issues that have come up in our teaching and educational practices. And it's really a group for a lot of sharing best practices, also just getting advice on maybe difficulties that we're facing in teaching at the moment, and getting some tips on how to handle that. And then also I've recently joined the AI and Education community of practice, which is also really about sharing. And this, what I like about this one is it's between faculties as well, so you can hear about what's going on in the different faculties and not just be sort of stuck in your own bubble. So yeah, for me, communities of practice are really about sharing and also getting to connect with people from different areas. In the community of practice on inclusivity and diversity, that one's connecting across programs within the faculty with often colleagues I don't usually interact with on a day-to-day basis. And then AI and Education is also other colleagues from different faculties I don't usually see or get to hear about what they're doing. So I really appreciate, I think, that aspect of the sharing, of bringing together ideas and then also translating those ideas into practice.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to me that, the topic of the community practice, diversity and inclusivity is also about diverse perspectives. And then you're also saying that that's one of the things that you really value about it. So yeah, interesting. And Ellen, you also facilitated a community practice on student employability. Would you say something more about your experience there as well?
Yeah. We got the assignment from our executive board to initiate a project on student employability. How can we enhance, improve the employability of our students? It started as a project, and looking back, it felt like it was not just a project. It was really a community where staff members from service centers, also very important, and faculties were very engaged and all were actively involved to different levels. And it really felt like learning together, and it was not the formal learning like in training, and that's what I heard in the story from Karen and also from Robin. It's also the informal learning, the exchanging and the reflection, and that were really key components in that 3-year period. So looking back, it did not feel like a project, but it really felt like a community we built. And at some point, and I'm proud of that, at some point we had 100 people engaged in it in more different active roles, but all contributed. And that's where it started. And that's also where my curiosity started in what is a community of practice. And then you dive a little bit into literature. The whole world opens then, for me at least. And that really helped me in reflecting on also the position of EDLAB in teaching and learning.
So interesting. I'm going to ask you to say more about that later at a later point. I wanted to ask you, based on what you just told, that at one point you had like 100 people or more than 100 people. That's a lot. I mean, it's a lot to manage, right? Yeah. I mean, how did you do that? Yeah, it's just, for me, it's impossible to fathom like managing 100 people, different projects.
A lot of energy. And that's one thing also. You cannot do it on yourselves. It's a team, and I had a core team. And with whom I organized, scheduled, kept the overview, keeping everybody informed. It was like formal, almost a newsletter, but it helped to keep everybody involved. With a very open invitation. Do you want to know more? Do you want to become actively involved? Then please join. And that's what we did really on a regular basis. And we were strict in that. So every quarter we had a newsletter. And that helped in informing and getting people engaged. And of course, that's passive. So it was also that open invitation. I had a lot of cup of coffee all around the whole university. Just to invite people to become actively involved. Just really that personal connection. And I think that's vital to keep such a community running. And of course, at some point we had 14 working groups. Keeping the overview is a challenge. I agree. But just do it, I think. That's really because that's really what I feel. You get so much energy. You give energy, but you get so much energy and ideas and involvement and commitment and people going, not the extra mile, but really feel their commitment and bring it. That makes such a community for me that, it was really fun. Every time I talk about it, I feel that energy again. Yeah.
Oh, that's really great to hear. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there was communication is an important aspect, and also, this open invitation to people, right? That it's, that people feel their own kind of motivation to get involved and participate and come up with ideas and share ideas. And then it kind of has a snowballing effect almost. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was also in the story with Karen, and also in your story, and what we also did, regular meetings. So have a set moment. If people can attend, you can always attend. You cannot, okay, the meeting will still continue. Open invitation. If you have, like you said, new master students that do thesis on the subject, join. That's perhaps temporarily, but it's really that you share the same ambition, the same passion. And that's what a common denominator is.
Does that story resonate for either of you?
Yeah, definitely. What I also like, Robin, you talked about different faculties being involved. And what I see in our special interest group is that it has developed into a very international group. Before COVID, we had our core group of colleagues at Maastricht University. We sat together in a room and we had a Zoom connection with some external PhD students, for example, or alumni. But since Corona, we are all online, and we are much more international and equal and inclusive in that sense. So we have members from Indonesia, from Vietnam, from Canada, from all over the world in different phases of their career. But we all have that same mission of involving students more in the educational design. Often we cannot have large impact right from the beginning. We have to start with small initiatives. And if we can stimulate and encourage and support each other in that journey, that's wonderful. I see also members connect to each other outside of the group meetings, where they know from each other, you have done that before, maybe I can learn from you. Can you tell me how you did that? As you said, Alan, it's energizing. It's you feel the intrinsic motivation to make best use of the group, and they are developing different collaborations on conference workshops, on papers that they work on together, and it's every time new ideas pop up and new smaller teams start new initiatives, and that's really great to see.
Yeah, I can feel your energy as you talk about it. It's really, it's great. Yeah. I wanted to ask you though, first of all, like, how did this idea for the community start in the first place? I mean, you were interested in the topic already, right? But how did it grow into a community of practice? Like, what sort of sparked that? That step. Is it something you can even remember? I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, I started in 2018, so we are already, I think, around 40 times that the group met. It was a local group in the beginning, and it was more that the idea within our School of Health Professions Education to have kind of groups that read literature together. And it was really small, and it was local in the beginning. And as I said, then some international colleagues joined. But yeah, as a background, I'm a primary school teacher, so I felt we can do more with this group, and there is energy in the group, and so we can develop initiatives together. And once that started, from the one idea, the other are developed, and now there are ever more initiatives that come from the group. It's like a flower.
It's a beautiful metaphor. Yeah. Wow. Robin, how do you feel about this? Any things that come to mind in listening to the others?
Yeah, lots of things, I think. Especially there are so many connections, even though we're all doing these projects independently. I find there's so many things that I resonate with. Definitely this idea of kind of the growth, also how you have lots of different people coming in and then taking these ideas into their own practices and feeding back how they use this in their classes, in their teaching, to kind of develop their own work. And then also the sort of aspects of flexibility. I think that's something I really like with with the groups I'm part of as well. There's generally the same sort of setup with these core members and then a lot of people coming in. But I like that that those who want to just visit maybe once or twice a year can also get something out of that community of practice. But then those who are really committed and really get a lot out of this session can continue to join every single session. So yeah, I think I resonate with a lot of that, and then just the energy, I think, as well, because I find these communities of practice, they are really a great place to just hear from colleagues, to feel like you're not alone in a lot of the things that you're going through or questioning, to feel like you always have this support base. So I think I also really connect with that idea of the support base, and the fact that the support base also can help you develop together, and also feel like then you have a sounding board if you have anything that comes up. And I think the offshoots are really interesting to think about as well. So yeah, definitely a lot that I connect with. So it's nice to see that this is going on.
How did this community practice get started, and what sparked your own involvement in it, like, and then becoming kind of more the leader, kind of facilitator of the community?
So that actually was originally started, I think it was 2021. I may be incorrect with those dates, but two of my colleagues had been discussing issues around inclusivity, diversity in the classroom, and specifically really sensitive or difficult discussions that they'd had and not knowing how to handle it. And they were just talking amongst themselves and decided maybe other people are having similar questions and we could bring this together. And then I was talking to some other colleagues about facilitating staff training, also on kind of diversity within PBL situations. How do we incorporate this? And then what happened there is through the grapevine, they heard that I was also interested in this, sent me an email and said, would you like to join our community of practice? So that got started. And then also I slowly became one of the core members then. So I would attend all of the sessions, and I found that I was really gaining a lot and getting to also chat to colleagues and was quite inspired by this group. And from that then later on, those who were organizing, so my colleagues Brigitte and Valentina, they weren't able to take as much of a sort of front and center role as the organizers. So then asked me and another colleague, Sharon, if we could maybe co-facilitate. So in that sense, we had volunteered to take that on, and now we're co-facilitating this group for the third year running. So that's a bit of a backstory about how it got started.
But it also, like, for me, it illustrates like the process, like, because you talked about how, you would constantly invite people, and in the same way you were also invited to join, and then you found it was interesting and relevant for you and your own work, and then now you're, facilitating it. So yeah, really interesting to hear all of your stories. I'm curious because I'm thinking about, our listeners, how they also may be interested in either joining communities of practice or facilitating them themselves, like starting them up. I'm wondering if you have any example of something that happened and, how you dealt with that, or something that tends to go really well. I mean, things that have been really highlights for you.
If I may start, what I really liked about your community, Karen, is also the research component in it. And what we did with student employability, and I think it's also what we do within the EDLAB communities, is research is a component in what you do. And what we did is that via research in the employability project, we developed a common language. Like, everybody understood at some point in time, okay, this is what if we talk about student employability, this is what we talk about. And this is how we can translate that to our education, so it's becoming visible in the education. And that common knowledge, founded in research, because we are in an academic community, in the total university, I think that has brought much value for the whole community to continue growing, because we always went back to, this is the shared knowledge we have, the shared concept, this is what we understand, and this is our way of working. We also developed a kind of way of working, small prototypes, and then if it works, okay, let's go to the next phase. That was also communicated, so we also communicated a lot about how we worked, not only about the contents. And that helped in either, hey, that's a fun way of working and I like being connected to it. And also some people said, I cannot deal with that way of working. It's too abstract for me, too free, too organic. Like I also heard you almost saying that word, Robin, like organic growing. Yeah, if that doesn't fit you, then it's good to know, okay, but this is how we are going to work here. So shared knowledge, research founded, and open about the way of working. That were some crucial elements for me.
Yeah, I think with our community of practice, it's still quite a small group, but I think what we actually see in the way that it grows outward or that it expands into other dimensions is really taking what we learn or what we discuss in the community of practice out into our own teaching practices. So not as much as a very clear, concrete output, which has also been something interesting in that if we have to sort of list our outcomes, it's more difficult to do that. But I think one of the most positive sort of experiences getting feedback from colleagues who say, we discussed, for example, we talked about how to deal with or work with uncomfortable emotions in the classroom. And then a colleague coming back and saying, a situation arose that a student was very angry and upset, and I thought about what we discussed in the community of practice, and I tried to incorporate that into the class. Or we had another session that was about student perspectives on diversity and inclusivity, and we invited some students from the Global Studies program to come speak with the staff. And there was the sense of kind of bringing ideas together, and also the fact that we were constantly having separate discussions and students and staff on the same issues. But now bringing it together, I felt like it really helped to bridge some kind of a gap between the students and the staff in that way. And also I had some positive feedback from colleagues on that session, and they said it really helped them to realize where the students were coming from or why they were upset and what they were thinking, so that they didn't feel like we're just on two completely opposite sides. So I think in those ways, the outcomes that we have are maybe less obvious in terms of sort of research output or something like that, but very clearly in terms of the practice and also what we each kind of gain in our own understanding of each other, and then also of teaching practices.
But like, how do you get people like who maybe don't know each other that well, or who think different things about a topic, have all these experiences, to be comfortable enough in a room to be able to talk about experiencing difficult emotions in the classroom? Like, that seems like the kind of thing that, like, a lot of conversations that, that I've been part of or that I've witnessed here, they don't get to that level. Like, how do you do that? Like, what did you feel was helpful in facilitating that kind of conversation? Yeah,
I think it's really the space that is set. And as I said, with the colleagues that originally started this space, they're also both very kind of approachable, welcoming people who I think set that space in a particular way and created that dynamic that you knew you could share. And so I think it's also something that's kind of, again, organically cultivated, in that it was, you get there and someone else shared, and then because they shared something, then you felt like you could share, and then it created that space. And maybe also because we have these regular meetings with also kind of core groups, you get to know each other better as you go along. So I think at first I was also maybe not sure how much do you share about your teaching practices, what to share, and then when you hear others open up and you also get a better sense of who they are, it makes you more comfortable. So I think for me it was really just about, again, that community aspect, and that you're familiar with them, you become more comfortable, and then you also realize that this is a space where you can speak and where you're not being judged on what you say, but rather we're trying to work through something together.
But did you feel like you have to be like, I mean, because I can imagine it's the difference between like being a facilitator and feeling like, oh, that you have to be like an emotional expert or something, so that you can put other people at ease. But it sounds like it's different. It sounds like it's more of it's about like being yourself, and being vulnerable like yourself, or kind of like, demonstrating or taking that first step. Is that how you would describe how you, kind of create the atmosphere, or help to create the atmosphere? Yes. It's not about being like an expert in whatever it is, but it's more just about being open and
Yeah, I think that's very true. And also the way that it's organized, while I'm co-facilitating, we're not really taking over the conversation. We basically just sometimes set an agenda or we invite people to speak, but it's really kind of run by everyone. So even though we'd maybe introduce the session, I don't do actually much facilitation, it feels like. It is just more of a conversation, and what does everyone want to discuss today? Or this is the topic, what do you think on it? So in that case, I don't feel as responsible for setting the space, because I think everyone is equally responsible in that way.
Interesting. Yeah, it also resonates with what you've said, Ellen, And Karen, you were going to just say something.
Yeah, it really makes sense, Robin, what you say. Also from the research side of psychological safety theories, because indeed showing your own vulnerability, your own doubts, inviting others to think with you about solutions, not giving the suggestion that you are the expert or you know the answers, that really helps in creating a good atmosphere. And you said, Robin, it's developed organically, and that's fantastic, of course, but it doesn't mean that it grows automatically.
That's really helpful to hear. Yeah, because as Robin mentioned, we have at EDLAB a community practice on AI in education, and I'm actually facilitating that one. And we've been trying to figure out how to bring students into the conversation for a while. And we're preparing to go into our next meeting, which is going to be on the topic of the student perspective. So really helpful to hear your suggestions, Karen, for that. Yeah, I'll definitely keep them in mind.
Yeah, good luck. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, AI in education, as everyone knows, is quite a sensitive topic when it comes to students using it and teachers, how teachers perceive that, how students perceive what teachers are thinking. So
the discrepancies might be very large, but then you can learn even more from each other and benefit from that conversation.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Yeah, reflecting on my own experiences, and it makes me realize that communities of practice are also spaces, places where people in our university can also connect to dialogue that's happening across universities or, sort of globally very, very easily. I mean, it's somehow easier than for this big machine of a university, to do as a whole. Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, because this is what I find a lot as well. There's so much going on, and sometimes you can't keep track of it all. So it really helps as being able to have these offshoots, and then to also have people bring in the information that they've received outside from their own experiences into that one group. Like, what I really appreciate about the AI in education community of practice is that I could never know about all of these initiatives by myself. I need to have some kind of connections. And then also often you think, okay, I'm the only person who's working on this, and then you realize that there's so many, and that it's that you're, again, as I said earlier, you're definitely not alone in this. So yeah, I think that's also really interesting how it creates these connections, even in this supposedly very connected world now with all of these communication channels we have. You realize just having a group in the same room is actually the best way to bring together this information, as opposed to trying to sort through it yourself on staff intranet or through emails, through event marketing or any of this.
Ellen, you're looking like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, what I was thinking is that I fully agree with Robin, but you need all those, more flat-like communication lines. Otherwise, you would not know about what's going on. And that's what we also tried within student employability. We really had a very strong communication activities. I was on my bike the whole day around the university to talk, connect, have meetings, visit teams. We tried an online community, but that's another, area of expertise. We did not have it in our group. And it takes a lot of time to also engage an online community. And I'm still wondering how to make that successful in the larger end. And your community is online.
Yeah, but it's synchronous.
It's exactly, yes, exactly. And how to deal with asynchronous community supportive. And what we in the end ended up with was just an archive, a project archive, accessible for everybody, the whole community, all the finished products. But that's not a community. So that's I think I'm still struggling how to make it as synchronous that it's still and people are actively involved. But you need the passive forms of communication to even inform people and to invite people.
Okay, well, so far we've talked about what communities of practice are, how people can get involved in them, and why they find the experience so rewarding. Now, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll delve further into tips for how to lead a community practice, as well as challenges that can arise and how to overcome them. Okay, so coming back to our kind of roundtable discussion almost, I guess. We were actually already just talking off the mic about what questions we would like to continue with. And one of the ones that came up was, how to keep a community practice going. Because maybe so far we've painted a pretty, kind of rosy picture of, you know, how lovely it is, you know, how wonderful it is to be part of it, and, you know, what you can get out of it, which sounds really like a lot. But from the day to day, you know, as an organizer, as someone who's facilitating community practice, there are challenges. And the question was, you know, that we were talking about was, how do you keep it going? You know, how do you keep the inspiration, the energy, you know, what helps it to keep going? And what do you do as a leader that helps, you know?
What I experienced in my group is that the output was very inspiring. So in the first or the second year, we a part of the group developed an article, a paper first, and then it got published, an article about the terminology of co-creation and related terms like students as partners, participatory design, design-based research. And so we collaborated, a group of 4, on this literature review, and we published that, and that was the first moment that we as a special interest group had something in our hands that was developed within the context, so not in your own PhD project, but really in the context of the special interest group. And that fueled something, and there came more of these articles in different compositions of people who collaborated, and that was really inspiring. And we started with doing workshops on conferences, also international, nationally. Different groups of people collaborating on these kind of things. This year we had a keynote at an international conference, at the AMI Faculty Development Conference, and I involved, I was the first presenter, but I involved 3 members of the special interest group to do that together. So I really want the co-creation special interest group to be a co-creation environment. So now the idea came from that to do a workshop at the AMI next year on that. So having real output is inspiring for everyone, and you develop new ideas as a follow-up on that.
Did you ever have a moment where people like didn't want to produce output, like where there wasn't energy to produce output, where it was just like conversation, and then like the next meeting, like did that happen as well?
Yeah, what as a chair, as a leader, I experience, but I get used to it, is that it's not for everyone as much priority as it is for me. They all have very busy lives. They have a job, they are doing a PhD project, and the special interest group meeting is something next to that. So sometimes I don't get points for the agenda. But I no longer interpret that as lack of energy. It's just not top priority. There is not enough time for that. I try to now at the end, my last point on the agenda is always, do you already expect something to have for the next meeting for on the agenda? And then you get already replies from, okay, yeah, maybe I can share my paper then, or I can share my project then. So that helps a bit.
Yeah, and for you and you, the question was, how do you keep it going? Like, you know, what happens when things kind of get to a lull, and then what?
A lot of what Karen told resonates with me, and how I think it works in general, but it needs persistence. It needs it needs the facilitation role, like you keep on putting on the agenda. That's what I did. I did have the meetings every month, so I think it's kind of that structure, offering also that structure and that rhythm. What I did in addition to get people, I always had an open agenda also. So if people had a great idea, they could just send a proposal to me, and then right way, we would find a way to work on the idea, to facilitate people with a little bit of budget, with a little bit of project money. And that resulted in some nice tools that were built in addition to what we did already within employability. And what I liked in the story of Karen is the shared output. Once we had the common language and we produced an article, like a scientific article around it, that was like of the turning point in some discussions with the faculties, because then it was not like, oh, Ellen is saying something, or that community is saying something. No, hey, it's also like founded in some tough research. It was a conceptual paper that are not the easiest one to get published. So that was quite an accomplishment of that group of colleagues within the community. So, and that facilitation also, so facilitation, persistence, you need it, but also the really open agenda, literally like, okay, if you have a great idea, share it with me, and we will see what we can do. And that's what we do within EDLAB too. Mm-hmm. If people have a great idea, we are happy to see how we can facilitate it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for you, Robin?
Yeah, I think also some of the challenges that both Karen and Ellen brought up are very familiar in terms of trying to keep that energy going, but also participation. Because the issue is, even if we have a lot of energy and enthusiasm, people have such busy schedules. So I think that's often happened where we'll have a meeting and only half the group or less can make it. So I think we have around 30 people on the mailing list, but most of the time there are less than 10 people in the meetings. So also trying to keep up that participation. And as I was saying, they're the core members, but we also always have that question of how do we involve more people? And especially on an issue like this, which on inclusivity and diversity, which we feel like is important for everyone, the problem is we have mostly the people who are attending are those who are already interested in the topic, and we always have this kind of question of how do we bring in people who are maybe outside of this discussion but really should be within the discussion as well, or could really learn a lot from it, but it just isn't on their agenda. So that's kind of a question that constantly comes up for us as well. How do we bring in more people that you're not just, to use the phrase, kind of preaching to the converted, or you're not just speaking to people who already have the same ideas. We do want kind of different ideas to come in as well. So that's maybe one of the challenges that we've faced. And then also both of you had talked about this kind of output. And as I'd said earlier, we don't really have such a clear output sometimes. So we also had this a meeting last week, and we were discussing, okay, what do we actually want from this group? What do we want to put out? Do we want to just keep it as the space for sort of sharing practices, for incorporating them into our teaching, but not as something formalized? Or do we want to formalize this to say we should write a paper or we should do something at the end? And there were also kind of mixed feelings about that. So I think at the moment we're kind of keeping it as it is, but seeing if there's a potential to bring that out. So yeah, these were some of the things I was thinking of, and that, as you were saying earlier, it's not always this kind of rosy picture. There are things you struggle with in terms of the participation, keeping up with everyone's busy schedules. But then what I've also found very helpful is that sometimes colleagues will send an email and saying, I really want to join, but I'm just busy at the moment, but I will join for future sessions. So again, it's not that they no longer want to be a part of it, or it's not that they're not interested or not gaining anything from this, but it's just that very busy schedules come in the way of it.
Yeah, it also was something that resonated for me because, this community practice on AI and education is really in its baby stages. Like, we're going into our 7th meeting next month. And I often had that feeling as the sole facilitator, basically. I mean, why do people, like the freak out, But I've also started to realize, it's just about keeping it up. It's just about having the space regularly every month that it happens. It's always there. People can come if they want, not if they don't want. And then seeing kind of how the momentum of the group is on any one occasion. And, gradually things build, because naturally people feel like, I don't just want to show up. I want to do something here. And then that kind of leads to something else. But to follow up on what you said, Robin, you said that you as a group don't focus so much on like concrete outputs or things like that. So what is it that you feel that keeps people coming back?
I think really that space for connecting, and also because it does feedback directly to the classes. So say you have some kind of tension or conflict between some students in your class, then you come to the community of practice and you say, I had this issue and I didn't know what to do about it. What can I do? And then you get feedback from it, and then you go to the next class the next week and you can maybe address that with the students. So I think it's that feeling, it's a direct reflection. So it does have this kind of direct output, but just not a measurable one. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something we also sometimes struggle with in education, is not everything is measurable. The kind of what you gain is not always something you can put down on paper, but it is still something productive and valuable. So yeah, I think in that way the group is valuable, even though there's not maybe a paper output or a tangible output.
So it sounds to me like what matters is that what people get from the group, that they feel somehow that it's meaningful to them, right? And it can be, if it's a more research-oriented group, it can be research output. If it's not some teacher-oriented group, it can be teaching kind of output. But yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Anything else anyone wanted to add on that or got inspired to say?
I was triggered by one of the comments by Karen. If people don't show up or don't put things on the agenda, it's not like it's not interesting.
Yeah, and try to invite new people to the group, because that's refreshing as well, to have new energy, new questions, new practical questions, but also indeed more conceptual questions. I try to use every opportunity, being educational days at EDLAB or conference workshops, to say, okay, are you interested in this and do you want to join? Please let me know.
It's the open atmosphere you want to create within, and whether it's about teaching, whether it's about research, whether it's more about something like student employability or language models in education, that's both research and education. It's really that open atmosphere. I think that's crucial. What I also hear, if you speak about it, it's your passion, Karen, and I see that with you, and I feel that with me. So it's also your own passion for the subject you are talking about, and you're doing research in, and you want to build that community beyond the community you already have. So to get more outreach and in that sense more impact, because you want to improve education in general. And that's kind of the line in me.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear from you, really, like, how your experiences of leading this community practice and so on, like how they now translate into how you see your work as the director of EDLAB, and what any connections there are.
I really think that what we have done the last year with the lots of meetings, the activities, the synchronous activities where a lot of people met, where you, Karin, joined us, where Robin joined us. I think that's the biggest part. And the second part should be, and that's what we are working on, a dedicated platform where all the information, what's going on, is available. It's accurate, it's up to date. That's a challenge in itself within and then I think moderation on more, perhaps at some point a Q&A-like chatbot on education questions. But for me, that's really long-term. And in the end, it's about people and it's about connecting. I think these are key, and that's where I hope that the door at EDLAB is always open. So if somebody at this table would have a great idea, then the first step would be have a coffee and see how we can create from that idea a project, a research activity, a community, if that is what wished for. But it's really about people and connecting. And all the other is almost secondary to that, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, it also makes me think about how, at EDLAB, one of the things we want to do is to encourage people to work with us to facilitate communities of practice on topics of their own interest. So, so literally the door is open. Yeah, anything else that any of you would like to add about your experience, or for our listeners today, anything they should know that we haven't touched on yet about communities of practice?
Yeah, I think we've been through a lot, but I think Ellen also summarized it really nicely, just about people, connections, and about, I guess, keeping that going. Maybe that's something that we said, even when it seems like, is this worth it? I think sometimes, pushing through, continuing those conversations, and kind of gaining that visibility, that momentum. I think, it's definitely worth going into. So I would say for any listeners as well, if you're thinking about trying, as Alice said, definitely pursue this. It's something really valuable that you can learn a lot from, and also kind of facilitate those connections with other people.
Well, that concludes our inspiring conversation for now on communities of practice. Thank you so much, Ellen, Karen, and Robin, for being here today and sharing your enthusiasm and commitment to being part of and leading these communities, contributing to positive and rewarding experiences for everyone involved. As we've heard, communities of practice offer safe spaces where we can be ourselves, even be vulnerable, and build connections that transcend disciplines, departments, and roles. They also allow us to gain valuable insights and inspiration for innovating our practice, as well as to develop a common language, collaborate on projects, and create and share knowledge. They are truly hidden gems where people can develop their expertise and experience growth and transformation both personally and professionally. For those of you who are interested in learning more about communities of practice and how you can join or lead one, you'll find information and links in the episode description. Thank you again for coming along with us on this journey. We look forward to bringing you the next episode soon.